buying scenario that we kind of did a little example.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jean. Yeah, one of the things too is a lot of consumers out there don't realize that they could actually buy. They've always thought themselves as renters, and now they're in this pickle because rents are so high. But we did a great example in our area. If somebody's looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, roughly about 1,400 square feet, purchase price on average maybe about $140,000. If they were to rent that, it's probably going to be anywhere from $1,200 to $1,600, depending on the area. Now, if they did a mortgage with a minimal down payment of only 3.5% down, because that's the other thing. A lot of people think they need 20% down, but it's not the case. Sometimes they might even get away with just as little as 3%, or if they're veterans, nothing.
Right.
And if we ran a scenario where you put down a minimal amount with the taxes and insurance and home mortgage insurance that is required, just over $1,000 a month on a mortgage.
So you're not only saving $200 or $300, maybe $400 in rent.
Right.
We don't have time to get into the big tax advantages, but technically there's some tax advantages there at the end of the year that in reality your mortgage didn't cost you as much as you thought because you're going to be able to write off a lot of the interest and so forth. So there's a big difference when you take that into consideration as well. And of course, there's a lot of advantages. One of the things we are finding with rentals, now that rentals are hard to find, all the specifications and the requirements have gotten strict. Nobody wants to have animals. They're limiting how many people will rent it. They only want so many people renting. And, they don't want families of 6 renting a 3-bedroom. They want only 3 people renting. They want that. When you own, you can nail up pictures. You can do whatever you want. You can bring your animals, fence in the backyard. It's so much easier. But let's give us a little bit of scenario on that second. We're kind of wrapping into our second question. How do I know how much I should budget for a mortgage payment? So that kind of goes into qualifying. Of course, the first thing we always tell people to do before we even get interested in looking at property is to give you a call, because over the phone, in most cases, you can find out very quickly exactly where they need to be, not only to qualify, but maybe their comfort level. Maybe they can qualify to make a $1,500 or $2,000 mortgage payment a month, but that's not what they want.
Correct.
So you need to know those things. So some of the tips on how to get ready. One of the things we talked about is a lot of people kind of shoot themselves in the foot before they go for a mortgage because they haven't set themselves up right to purchase a home. Some of those tips, let's go into some of those tips we talked about. Maybe you have them on your do's and don'ts, or some of the tips that one of them that comes to mind is when you're talking about seasoned money. I like that, seasoned money.
Yes. Okay. One of the main things if anybody's just even thinking about it, sometimes they don't want to call us if they're thinking it's 6 months or 12 months down the road that they'll hold off. But that is absolutely one of the best times you can call a lender. We can go over some numbers for you just to make sure that you are prepared, because sometimes things can take up to 6 months' time to get you prepared for doing the home purchase. But a couple of tips as far as our down payment and funds to close. We want to make sure we're saving up in our savings account and it has seasoned in your account for 2 solid months of bank statements. So that could be a little over 60 days because they are actual bank statements.
So let's make sure people understand that. I've got cash and I've got $10,000. Maybe it was given to me and I've got it under my mattress right now because I haven't decided where I'm going to put it. If all of a sudden I'm out there looking at property and I say I want to take this $10,000 and put it on a down payment, I still have to show where I came up with that $10,000. So it needs to be put in a savings account or a checking account, something trackable for at least 2 months so I can use it as cash. That's kind of bizarre when we think in terms of we can't use cash for buying things, but it was basically, I think, years ago when there was so much drug trafficking and so forth, they're trying to find out, hey, how are you coming up with this cash?
Right.
So we're kind of paying for that industry as well. That's one of the new security things. Yeah. But you want to make sure you know what's going to be expected of you. So you see a house you like and you've told that real estate agent, I'm going to be putting $20,000 down. You meet with you. All of a sudden, you can't do anything for 2 months because it's not seasoned. So that's what we mean by seasoned money.
Right. As long as if we can show the ability, say they sold something like a boat or something, and we can prove that they owned it and the person gave them cash and they held it. But that is definitely a good tip as far as some people feel, whether they're getting paid in tips or a lot of their employment is paid on cash and they keep it. They think it's okay, which it is. It's fine. But when you come to buying a home, if we can't trail it or provide a good trail and proof, then we can't use it. But if they are consistently putting it into the bank and letting it season into their bank account, we can use it.
What are a couple other tips that people should be aware of right now if they're say 90 days out from purchasing as a minimum? Some of the things they should be you talked about seasoned money. Maybe they need to season themselves a little bit. They need to be doing some things that make themselves more mortgage, what would be the
friendly,
word? Friendly. Yeah, there you go.
Better interest rates. A lot of stuff does derive from credit. So there's a couple of good credit tips as far as not opening up new installments. So car loans or any kind of long-term, short-term installment type loans. Those can bring down your credit score as well as maybe throw your debt to income ratio a little bit out of whack. If you're thinking of getting a new car, that payment could hinder our process.
That's right. Speaking about car loans, if you have a car loan right now, there's a little magic formula a lot of people don't realize that if you go in, if you owe a year out on your car loan, it's going to act against you technically when you're trying to qualify because it's going to be considered a loan.
Right.
What do they need to do to make that loan kind of disappear off of their not off their credit, but off of their qualifying?
Okay, that's a great question, Jean. It doesn't actually disappear, but one of the nice things is if somebody has 10 months or less left on their installment loan, so not a revolving, not any kind of credit card, but like an installment car loan, we don't have to count that debt against them. So that does help them qualify for a higher mortgage payment. But circling back to what you were saying as far as people's comfort level, the majority of the time we can approve them for a higher mortgage than what most people are comfortable with. So we always do, I always want to make sure that we work with their comfort level and kind of work backwards and let them know based on their comfort level what type of mortgage they could afford as far as a loan amount.
Well, on that, back to that car payment, just so you understand, if you have, let's say, 12 or 13 payments left, you don't have to wait 4 months until it's under 10 months. You can pay 3 months up front and get it down to 10 months owed on it. You know what I'm saying? You can prepay, so technically you only have 10 more months on it.
Right. You could do that, and then it's just a matter of waiting, not having your lender or waiting for that to season in your credit report.
Right. So you can manipulate that to where it works with the correct rules and regulations.
Right.
So
this is where I just want to interject. This is where the pre-planning comes in.
Yes.
So when Carolyn says you're thinking about buying a home, don't wait until, okay, I'm now ready to buy a home. Let me call Carolyn. It's okay. I'm thinking about buying a home. Let me call Carolyn so I can be prepared when the time comes to buy the home.
Yes,
exactly. There are so many things that, especially when I'm working with the boomers and seniors and so forth, a lot of people haven't bought or sold a home in 30 years. So they're still working with old rules and regulations, and they think, oh, when I get ready to buy, I'll buy. But they don't realize things have changed ever since we had the financial debacle or whatever we're calling it, our economic downturn, whatever we're nicely talking about in the mid 2000s. Things have changed, so it's very important that lenders explain everything. In fact, there's something just happened a few months ago, a special closing, not a closing, but an attempt to tell people exactly what they're closing on. I forgot what the
closing disclosure.
That's the one, and you have to do that just a few days before closing to make sure people understand and they don't wait at closing to find out what their payments are and so forth. And it used to be sometimes the day of closing you were getting your financial disclosures back. Now it's 48 hours?
It's 3 days.
3 days.
Yep, and it is a great rule because that way, like you said, seller or buyers have a little time to look at it. It's not, nothing can get changed, or it's not a shock right at the closing table when they have a moving truck.
Which brings up another thing. Carolyn Wolfe, you're local right here. And of course, you can handle loans all over Florida?
All over Florida. And we deal with all kinds of people from all over the world,
the area.
actually.
But the nice thing is you actually have a live person that is dealing with just your loan. I have this, I don't know, it's a affliction, I think, about some of these things on the internet. I'm talking to consumers now, please don't get excited about using some of the internet providers and some of the internet mortgages or real estate agents or whoever, because you're not always talking to the same person. And you might be talking to somebody out in Idaho that's arranging a Florida mortgage for you. And sometimes, I remember closings, we were waiting on a Friday night at 5 o'clock and we couldn't get a hold of someone and we needed a certain piece of paper. That's not going to happen as often now because we have that disclosure 3 days ahead of time. But still, there's sometimes something that is right up to the last minute we're waiting for. And if you're right there and make a phone call that you can get that paper over to them physically if they're in the Space Coast area or even anywhere in Florida, we got faxes, we've got all kinds of things, that you don't have to worry about every time you call the 800 number to some of these mortgage institutions that you're going to get a different person looking at your files. Please find that local mortgage company or that real live person that can explain things on the phone that you can actually visit, that actually has an office. So that's my my commercial for the day.
I wanted to interject in there if I can, Jean. One of the things, too, as far as the internet applications, when people are putting in their income and things like that, if they're just plugging in a number, there's a lot more to it where we can personally ask the questions and break down that income, such as part-time income, tip income, commission, bonus. That can change the whole dynamic of the loan, where when you're doing it online with an internet system, they're not going to ask you those questions and break it down.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking more and more on the future shows about different things that you need to know about mortgages. So you want to always favorite our show, upload it and keep it handy. And you can always go to talknetworkradio.com and see our shows that will be online. And you've been hearing Carolyn Wolfe from Certified Mortgage Planners explain some of the things that you need to know about obtaining a new mortgage. Also, Jonathan Lack, my co-host, he's a broker of Waterview Realty. He's also a real estate attorney with Lack & Lack Chartered in Indianapolis, and also owns Waterview Title Company. There isn't a question out there I don't think we've got the experts here. If there's a question out there that you need answered, please let us know. You can email us. You can also visit our website at yourhometownsolutions.com. And you can send information to me. Just do the contact button and send any kind of questions. It will make sure we address them on future shows. But we've had an exciting show. So one real quick tip on should I purchase if I know I'm leaving soon? We didn't get a chance to really answer that in depth. But Carolyn, John, what would you say to someone if they know they're going to be transferred, say, within 2 years? What would be your advice on whether they should rent and whether they should buy?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Well, again, every client you need to have a consultation with so that you know what their wants and needs are. Right. In the example you give, if you're coming to town and you're only going to be here a couple of years and you know you're leaving, then renting is probably the better option because of closing costs and fees and such. Buying a home you talked about earlier, one of the things you didn't mention, but it's kind of the most obvious, maybe that's why you didn't mention it, is when you buy a home, you're building equity. When you pay rent, you're paying rent. You get use of the premises while you're living there, and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. When you buy a home, at least a portion of your monthly payment goes to principal, and it reduces your debt and it increases your equity so that you can ultimately sell the home. But if it's only going to be over a 2-year period, it's going to be a little bit tight. So
that's what I would advise too. Or if you do decide to purchase, you want to have that advice of that. We're going to use the word seasoned again, seasoned real estate agent who can find that kind of community that they know they can sell that home and
sell it or rent
it right away for
you. Opportunity for renting, as we talked about before.
That is definitely okay as far as a mortgage.
Exactly. And there's so many things that we will be discussing in future shows. So right now, I'll mark your calendars for Mondays at 1 o'clock. And you've been listening to Jean Newell with Your Hometown Solutions. And we thank you for joining us today with Carolyn Wolfe with Certified Mortgage Brokers and Jonathan Lack with Waterview